Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is, well, pretty straightforward. We take complex reports, technical deep dives, company statements, and really boil them down to what you need to know. Today, we are digging into a pretty significant cybersecurity event. It involves a major player in the financial services space. We're talking about Prosper, the peer-to-peer lending marketplace. And, they're not just doing one thing. They handle personal loans, home equity, even a credit card, plus investor services. So yeah, a pretty wide net, which means this incident could affect a lot of different people using their services.
Exactly. And the situation is, frankly, quite urgent. This isn't a maybe situation. It's confirmed. We know, based on Prosper's own statements and third-party analysis, that a significant amount of very sensitive information was stolen. We're talking personal details, proprietary company data, all taken through unauthorized access to their databases.
Right, that's the heart of it. So what we've done is gather Prosper's official FAQs, combine them with external security reports, and our goal here is twofold. First, really understand how this attack happened, because the how is actually quite interesting. And second, get a handle on the potential scale, especially since we know data like social security numbers are involved. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so looking at the timeline, Prosper put out, some dates jump out. What did they first discover? And maybe more importantly, when did they actually stop the bleeding?
Well, according to Prosper, they spotted some unauthorized activity inside their systems, and to their credit, they seemed to react quickly, launched an incident response, brought in a major cybersecurity firm, the usual playbook. And crucially, they reported it to law enforcement pretty fast. That's always a key step. Now, the date they gave for containment is specific, September 2nd. They said they have no indications of any unauthorized activity since September 2. So theoretically, the door was shut then.
Okay, September 2nd. But that immediately brings up the big question, I think, for anyone affected or watching. If it stopped then, why did it take so long for the public announcement, for the details to come out? That gap feels, well, it feels concerning.
It does feel long, absolutely, and that silence can breed a lot of anxiety. Prosper's explanation, though, really centers on the complexity involved. They stressed prioritizing accuracy over just speed. I mean, think about it. Figuring out exactly what data was taken, whose data it is, navigating all the legal hoops for notification, setting up support like call centers, credit monitoring, it takes a huge amount of time, especially with potentially millions affected.
So the argument is telling everyone something happened before you know what happened could cause even more panic or lead people down the wrong path regarding their risk.
Precisely. It's that very difficult balancing act between being transparent and being accurate. When you're dealing with this kind of sensitive data, social security numbers and the like, getting it wrong could be disastrous. So you can see their logic in wanting to be sure.
Okay, let's tackle the number one fear head on then.
Yeah.
Money. If you have a loan with Prosper or an investment account, is your actual cash safe?
Right. And Prosper has been really firm and consistent on this point. They state there's no evidence that customer accounts or funds were accessed without authorization. So the platforms you use, applying for loans, making payments, managing investments, those operations weren't interrupted and, according to them, remain secure. The money itself wasn't the target.
That's a really important distinction. So it wasn't like a bank robbery where they grabbed the cash. It was more like they stole the building blueprints and the employee files.
Yeah.
If they weren't hitting the accounts, what exactly was the target?
That's a great analogy. It really was more about information theft. The method they used was quite specific. Prosper described it as unauthorized queries made on company databases that store customer information and applicant data. So think about that. The attackers weren't necessarily blasting through firewalls in the traditional sense. It sounds more like they got access to internal tools, maybe compromised credentials, and then used the company's own database systems to run reports and pull out data.
Ah, okay. So that points to something deeper inside. The internal plumbing, like researchers sometimes call it. Maybe weak spots in how they control access for privileged users, or how internal systems talk to each other. It means the attackers, once they were in, could basically use the system's intended functions data retrieval against itself.
Yeah.
That feels, more sophisticated than just breaking in the front door.
Exactly right. And that ties into a much bigger issue in cybersecurity now. If someone gets privileged access, are your internal checks strong enough to stop them from running, say, a massive query for everyone's social security number? Securing those internal database access controls, that's a huge challenge.
Makes sense. And just to close the loop on the money aspect for investors, there is that extra safety net, right? Even though Prosper says funds weren't touched.
Correct. For cash held in Prosper investment accounts, so uninvested money, those balances have FDIC insurance. It's provided by Wells Fargo Bank on what's called a pass-through basis. Now remember, that covers the failure of Wells Fargo, the bank holding the deposits, not Prosper itself, and it's subject to the usual FDIC limits. But it does provide some peace of mind for that cash portion.
Okay, good clarification. Now, let's pivot to the really worrying part, the data itself. What exactly has Prosper confirmed was actually stolen?
They've confirmed confidential, proprietary, and crucially personal information. And they specifically called out that Social Security numbers were part of the compromised data. That's always the big red flag. SSNs are the skeleton key for identity theft.
Right, and this is where things get potentially much bigger in scale. We need to bring in the analysis from Have I Been Pound, HIBP. Troy Hunt runs it. It's a widely respected breach notification service. What are they saying?
Yeah, HIBP plays an important role here. They collect and verify data from breaches, often data that starts circulating, elsewhere online. Their assessment puts the number of affected unique email addresses at 17.6 million.
17.6 million. That's
Yeah.
huge. That implies it wasn't just current customers, but potentially anyone who ever applied, right?
So it certainly suggests a very broad scope, likely including applicants, maybe even historical ones.
So why the difference? Prosper hasn't confirmed that 17.6 million number themselves.
Well, you have to understand how they operate differently. HIBP works independently, verifying data sets they acquire. Prosper, as the company, is under intense legal and regulatory scrutiny. They can likely only confirm what their own internal forensic investigation has absolutely verified. So Prosper acknowledged HIBP's claim, but stated they're not able to validate his claim yet because their own deep dive is still ongoing. But, 17.6 million, it's a number that demands attention, even if it's not officially confirmed by the company yet.
Let's try to contextualize that number. I mean, it's not the absolute biggest we've ever seen.
Right.
Think JP Morgan Chase at 83 million or Home Depot at 56 million. Those were monsters. But 17.6 million is still incredibly significant, especially today. But it's not just the number, is it? It's the type of data. Can you walk us through the full list HIBP reported? Because it sounds like it goes way beyond just emails and names.
Exactly. This is where the real danger lies. It's not just contact info. According to HIBP's analysis of the data set they obtained, the compromised information potentially includes full names, physical addresses, email addresses, obviously, but also government-issued IDs, dates of birth, and then the real kicker, detailed financial application data.
Financial application data. What does that cover?
Think about everything you put on a loan application. Credit status information, your employment status, your stated income level. They also mention technical details like IP addresses and browser info, which can sometimes be used in more sophisticated attacks. But it's that combination, SSN, date of birth, address, plus verified income and credit standing, that is pure gold for identity thieves.
Right. They can build what's called a synthetic identity or just take over yours more effectively. Apply for loans, credit cards.
Exactly. And this type of fraud can be really hard to detect. It might not show up for months, even years. It's a long-term threat hanging over anyone potentially affected.
It really shifts the risk profile. You're not just looking out for a dodgy email anymore. You're potentially dealing with someone trying to live a parallel financial life using your core identifiers. That's deeply unsettling.
Yeah. Okay, so given this really serious data loss, what steps has Prosper taken, both to lock things down now and to help people who might be impacted?
Well, they stated they implemented enhanced security controls, which you'd certainly expect, beefed up their monitoring and alerting systems, and they say they're continually reviewing their security and privacy policies. That last part is key, especially given that specific unauthorized query attack vector. They really need to scrutinize internal access controls.
And for the victims or potential victims, what's the remedy being offered?
Prosper has committed to offering free credit monitoring services. They've said they'll provide this as appropriate, which likely means once they definitively know who was affected and what specific data for each person was compromised. Given that SSNs are confirmed lost, you'd expect anyone whose SSN was involved will certainly be offered this. It's pretty essential in these situations. So for you, listening right now, maybe you're a Prosper customer, maybe you just applied once years ago, what should you be doing? What's the direct action?
Number one is vigilance. Monitor your financial statements, bank accounts, credit cards very closely. Keep an eye on your credit report for any inquiries or accounts you don't recognize. If you see anything suspicious specifically related to a Prosper account, whether it's a personal loan, credit card, home equity, or your investor services account, use the dedicated contact methods they have for those products. But for general questions about this incident itself, Prosper set up a specific incident response line. That number is 833-918-9464. Again, 833-9464. Again, 833-918-9464.
Got it. And they have specific hours for that line.
Yes, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. So keep that number handy if you have concerns.
Okay, good practical steps there.
So if we boil this whole deep dive down, what's the key takeaway? I think it's really about separating the immediate risk from the long-term one. Right now, Prosper says your funds, your ability to use their services, that's all secure and operational. That's the immediate picture. But the long-term risk from the data that was stolen, especially SSNs, IDs, income, credit status that's very high, this data is the perfect toolkit for sophisticated identity theft, and the effects might not surface for quite some time. That's the shadow hanging over this.
Yeah. And that specific detail we kept coming back to, the confirmation that data was taken via unauthorized queries made on company databases. That's the point I think we really need to chew on. It signals a shift, doesn't it? It's not just about defending the perimeter anymore. Attackers are getting inside and learning how to use the organization's own tools against them, exploiting internal data request systems, things designed for efficiency. It really highlights that the threat isn't always the obvious front door. Sometimes it's the internal plumbing. And securing database access, monitoring those internal queries, that's clearly a massive frontier for enterprise security. So the final thought maybe is this: what does it really mean for security when potentially the most devastating attack vector is essentially running a rogue report request from inside your own network? That's something to consider as you manage your own digital security going forward.